Oh, we got a flurry of activity and now breaking news coming out of Tennessee. Finally, after 9 days, we've got a federal magistrate judge who's made her ruling about Kilmar Abrego and whether he is going to be locked up and kept in jail pending his trial on human smuggling charges, or is he going to be held in detention by the Trump administration pending his future removal to a country not named El Salvador for immigration violations? Which is it? I know there's a lot of papers out there that have been reporting, including the New York Times, judge orders release of Abrego Garcia. That's not right. That's not what happened. I'm not going to blow smoke or sunshine. I'm going to tell you what just did happen, what the judge's order was, and what Trump's reaction to it was through his Department of Justice in their new filing, all right here on Legal AF. I think you come to Legal AF, and to me particularly, to get the straight scoop, not blowing smoke or sunshine as I sit at the intersection of law and politics using my experience as a practicing lawyer for the last 35 years. It was a complicated case. I get why other people got it wrong, but let me get it right for you. Abrego Garcia, as you know, I'm going to call him Kilmar Abrego. That's what he likes to be called. Mr. Abrego was a Maryland father, married to an American citizen, 2 American citizen kids, had a removal order in his pocket issued by an immigration judge, which said he can't ever be removed to El Salvador. Okay. There's lots of other countries in the world that Trump could have removed him to. But no, they threw him up. They threw him on the plane with 250 other human beings in the middle of the night without due process and sent him to El Salvador. Except Abrego Garcia, or Kilmar Abrego, was different because he had an order to prevent his removal to El Salvador. That made his removal illegal. How do I know that? The United States Supreme Court said it 9-0. Judge Zinnes said it in Maryland a number of times. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals said it. No due process, violation of the order, bring him back, bring him home. Where home is, like, nobody really thought he'd be released to Maryland, but at least be in the United States for due process purposes. So finally, after 2 months of playing catch me if you can, go pound sand, and taunting, the Trump administration finally got around to indicting Abrego Garcia, Kilmar Abrego, in Tennessee, based on a traffic stop in 2022 that he was released from. Wasn't even cited for a no insurance or driver's license. But he had 9 other human beings in there. So now they went back and started 3 weeks of investigation and put together and concocted and got a grand jury to indict him on human smuggling, not human trafficking. And there is a difference. One involves exploitation. That's the trafficking. Smuggling is sort of willing participants that want to cross a border. And so, sure, there were 9 people in the car. Nobody denies that. They had body cam footage of it. So the issue for the magistrate judge that she's been sitting on for 9 days and finally issued her 50-page decision is, are the factors present in her criminal justice side of the equation to pre-trial detain him, to keep him in detention, in prison, in federal detention center until his trial on the human smuggling grounds. Now, it's not up to her completely. She has to follow the rules, and the rules are under the Bail Reform Act. And there's only 3 requirements or 3 rationales for a judge to keep somebody presumed innocent, because that's our system of justice, in pretrial detention. Involves a crime involving a minor child. Not that, I'll talk about why they were pushing that one. Secondly, that he's a flight risk. There's evidence that he would be a flight risk. And third, that there's evidence that he would obstruct justice. What did the government argue at this hearing all day with an agent? That there was a 15-year-old in the car, but the evidence is pretty skimpy on that, among the 9 people that were in the car with him. That's the minor involvement. Then they tried to argue that he is a flight risk because he's facing a huge 10 to 15-year sentence for human smuggling. And the third one is that he is likely to obstruct justice and tamper with witnesses because he's a member of MS-13. And the magistrate judge went through methodically on all 3 of those and rejected it based on the skimpy, almost non-existent evidence that was presented in her courtroom, most of which consisted of double hearsay. Somebody heard somebody else do something. And we don't credit double hearsay. We don't even credit hearsay. And the higher the burden, the more credible the evidence has to be, as the judge remarked. Now, the judge is no fool. She said at the beginning of her order that we just got, this appears to be an academic exercise because he's never going to see the light of day. Because I'm not going to, even if I don't detain him pre-trial on the crime, there's a parallel immigration process in immigration court that the Trump administration is not letting him go. And they're starting, and they have started now, a proper due process-based removal to a country not named El Salvador for him, and they're going to detain him related to that. But she said it's important in our system of justice, in our system of due process, that he be given the due process that he's entitled to. So I'm not going to throw up my hands and say, well, it doesn't really matter because he's going to be detained in the immigration world. I have to look at it from the criminal justice world. And that's when she found the government has not satisfied their burden to show he's a flight risk, he's going to obstruct justice, and or a minor child was involved. On the minor child, she says, I'm not even sure there was a 15-year-old in there. What was the evidence of that? And the government said, well, during the traffic stop, the Tennessee state troopers had them fill out a form with a pen, and they all listed their birth dates. She said, I can't even read some of these. This is the one for the 15-year-old? If that's a 7, not a whatever, that makes him old enough. So there was debate over, she said, and it's hearsay, because this guy testifying in my courtroom is not the guy that got it from the 15-year-old, and it's not the 15-year-old or the alleged 15-year-old. You got to do better. And even if the 15-year-old was in the car, I don't see it as that type of involving a minor that would support detaining him. What else you got, the judge says? Well, he's a flight risk because he's staring at 15 years. She said, well, there's a big difference. This is in her order, which I'll read to you from. So there's a big difference between human trafficking and human smuggling. You guys were using those words interchangeably, but they're not. Human trafficking connotes exploitation. Somebody against their will is being trafficked, usually for sex crimes. Human smuggling is willing participants. I pay a mule, they bring me across a border. Human smuggling, not exploitive, commercial. And there's a difference in how the criminal justice system and the penal code treats those types. She said, and I've looked at in this district what people are getting for human smuggling, and it's like 12 months. That's not enough to engender a flight risk, that he's not, that's not high enough of a penalty that would make somebody want to avoid it at all costs and flee the jurisdiction and be a fugitive. And they said, well, he's MS-13. She says, well, what's that based on? And then she went through the 3 or 4 confidential informants, and she basically rejected all of them. She said, one guy has been deported 5 times, and he's going to avoid his 6th deportation by cooperating against Kilmar Abrego, Mr. Abrego. He's also a 2-time felon. He's also an admitted human smuggler. And it's double hearsay. I'm not really crediting much of what this guy has to say, given his bias in the case. She then went through another co-conspirator who's related to the first co-conspirator, and he's also going to get himself out of jail by rolling over on Abrego. A female cooperator who's the sister of the first guy, and she's going to get out of her criminal problems by rolling over on Abrego. And the whole thing, this whole kettle of fish stinks for the judge. And double hearsay and triple hearsay and the rest. She said on MS-13, it's the same thing. She said the co-conspirators about the 15-year-olds and the human trafficking, human smuggling, she said they're not even getting their story straight on whether Abrego is MS-13 or not. They're inconsistent. So, no, I'm not, based on these factors, going to detain him pre-trial. But she recognized, as I started the hot take with, this is not the end of the story. Because he's still in detention. At best, he'll get transferred to immigration detention in the United States. But then there's a process. Then he doesn't get immediately deported and removed. There is a process. Maybe 2 months, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. Depends on his lawyers, how good they are, at defending his interests and his rights. But at least he's on this side of El Salvador getting American-style due process. And that's all we can ask for. But the government didn't like the result. And this is a magistrate judge, just to explain that. Magistrate judges are not Article 3 judges. They're not lifetime appointed, but they do, like the laboring oar of most work, especially in criminal courts in places like Nashville, while the presiding district court judge, which is the lifetime appointed Senate confirmed Article 3 judge, sits above her. But they do bail and bond and conditions of release, and they do discovery and any kind of abuse by the government and the prosecution, and they look at the indictment. When it gets to the trial and later on, you've got Judge Crenshaw who sits over the case. But if you don't like the magistrate's rulings, you can appeal. A lot of reporting has been, they took an appeal. Yeah, they took an internal appeal to the federal judge, a district court judge, from the magistrate's ruling. What she wants is Wednesday this week, and I'll report on it, everybody getting together for a 2:00 hearing in Tennessee to talk about his release and the conditions of his release. I think based on the full day trial that she held, the fact that she's not done with her work till Wednesday, and the rest, that this 3-page motion that was just filed by the Department of Justice that said, please stay her order, and then recited out of order a bunch of evidence without any kind of record, any kind of supporting facts behind it, and asking for more time. I think Crenshaw should reject it, will reject it, should reject it. Give Judge Holmes, the magistrate judge, time to hold her hearing on Wednesday. Let the government make their record. Bring that up to the federal judge Crenshaw. He can make his ultimate decision. And if they don't like the decision, which would just be that he can't be detained pre-trial for the criminal human smuggling side of the case, has nothing to do with immigration. Even the judge says, let me just read to you from what she says on page 1. Perhaps the sole circumstance, Judge Holmes writes, about which the government and Abrego may agree in this case is likelihood that Abrego will remain in custody regardless of the outcome of the issues raised in the government's motion for detention. Either Abrego will remain in the custody of the Attorney General pending trial, according to the Bail Reform Act, or he will likely remain in U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, custody, subject to anticipated removal proceedings that are outside the jurisdiction of this court. It may appear to be an academic exercise, the judge says, but the foundation of the administration of our criminal law depends on the bedrocks of due process. I've got to give due process. They have not met their burden to keep him in jail on the criminal side, and I'm going to say that. Yeah? And, some people in the comments, I saw in an earlier hot take, said, well, what about Trump? And they're right. Under those 3 factors, during Trump's criminal cases, especially about witness tampering, where he had a demonstrated record of trying to influence witnesses and witness tamper and try to obstruct justice, including destroy evidence at Mar-a-Lago, he should have been pretrial detained. But no federal judge or state judge had the balls to do that, even though they had the right to do it under the same Bail Reform Act I'm analyzing for Abrego Garcia. This is the breaking news. Let me summarize it. They're going to be another hearing on Wednesday I'll cover in front of Magistrate Judge Holmes. She's going to, quote unquote, release him and not detain him for the criminal case through his trial in about a year, 6 months to a year. But he's not going anywhere because they're just going to turn the van around and transfer him to ICE detention facility where he sits subject to his removal process. That's already undergoing and underway. And the end of the day, a year from now or so, he'll likely be removed to a country not named El Salvador, despite the fact that he's married to an American citizen and has American children. That'll be up to a administrative judge for immigration and the lawyering for Abrego Garcia, Kilmar Abrego, to make those due process arguments. That's what's going to happen. So until my next report, you're here on Legal AF. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button. Follow us on all things Legal AF, including the podcast. And until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event, by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.